Hoka still remains undefeated in bubble butt technology. We cut apart one of their kind of trail running hiking boots, and just look at the size of the dump truck on this thing. And it really did get in the way. It was kind of hard to get through any real hiking. And obviously it's positioned a little bit more towards trail running, but they finally came out with a little bit more of a slim booty version that's more dedicated for hiking. And so we're gonna cut it in half, run it through our test to really see if all this Hoka stuff of them blowing up over the last few years is all just kind of the Hoka hoax with a little gimmick of this bubble butt, or if it is actually something that's game changing in the footwear industry. Are they doing things that are actually different and unique? That's what we're gonna find out. So what do I mean by them innovating and being this new kid on the block? Well, it all started in 2009 in France, where Hoka, formerly known as Hoka One One, a Maori word for to fly, was founded by two former Salomon employees, Nicolas Mormond and Jean-Luc Diard, who wanted to create a shoe that allowed for faster downhill running. And allegedly, this was the answer to the really popular barefoot running craze at the time with the 5-finger shoes that we've cut apart. And they wanted to take a completely different approach. So they created a model with an oversized outsole that had significantly more cushioning than any other running shoe at the time. And it was quickly embraced by a lot of the marathon runners because of that cushioning and the stability. And because of that, they were soon popularized. And by 2013, they had grown to a point where the brand was acquired by Deckers, which is the parent company for Uggs, the American Uggs. So go watch the Uggs video if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But they also own Teva, Sanuk, and a bunch of other brands. Then 5 years later in 2018, Hoka was the second brand to introduce a super shoe, a high-stack road running racing model with a carbon fiber plate embedded to allow that squishy midsole to rebound even faster. Very similar and right behind the Nike Vaporfly 4%. And it was a super successful shoe because Cam Levins wore the prototype and he shattered Canada's national record for his marathon debut that fall. And this was really what poured the fuel on the fire of the super shoe craze with all this crazy foam technology and all the layers and 3 inches of foam separating you from the ground with the Zoom X Invincible Run 2 that we cut apart, the On Cloud Monsters, the Adidas Ultra Boost 22s. So if you haven't seen those, check them out because it's gonna help round out the information. And that's really what Hoka started to be known for, is that type of shoe. Then during 2020 in the pandemic, where most brands and all footwear, especially in the athletic world, had a 65% downturn in sales, Hoka on the other hand had a huge increase of 58% on its 2019 sales alone. Since then, they've just continued to grow more and more and more. You see them in more shoe stores, you see them all over the place, runners on the trails, runners on the street, and all because during that craze of this barefoot minimal running shoe thing, they took the exact opposite approach and made them so comfy and so squishy and targeted toward that niche audience of ultra marathoners and marathon runners, basically anyone that's running long distance. So when they broke into the more hiking world, that's what really intrigued me until we cut this apart and actually wore it. And I was like, that booty is too much for me to handle. And so have they finally figured out how to make a good hiking boot, or is it still more the same where it's really just an impractical hiking boot and it's only good use is running on trails, which there's people that do it, but trail running, like walking up hills, tough enough, let alone trail running.
Which Rose Anvil wallet is right for you? If you're looking for a wallet you can go on a journey with, big enough to hold small notebooks, cash, passports, or boarding passes, and something you can throw in your bag and still fit in your pocket, you need the travel wallet. Let's look at wallet thickness and number of pockets. Here's how the travel stacks up. The travel wallet may not have the most pockets, it has 5 of them, and it may not be the thickest at 8.4 millimeters, but it's definitely the biggest. Closed, it's 4.25 by 5.75 inches, and open, it's 8.75 by 5.75 inches. And its hand stitching and full grain leather make it extra durable and everything you could need in a wallet. Check out the travel wallet and all of our other wallets at roseanvil.com.
So to answer that question, is this a hiking shoe? Is it an actual like trail running shoe? Let's go over what this boot is. So the brand is Hoka. The style is the Kaha 2 GTX. They weigh 1 pound, 3.8 ounces. They retail for a pretty steep $240, especially compared to the other boots that we've reviewed. They're made in Vietnam, and the way that Hoka positions this product is with a remarkable weight to cushion ratio. The Kaha 2 GTX delivers peak performance with peak plushness. Updated with the Hubble heel with swallowtail geometry, this durable hiker features Vibram Mega Grip with traction lug for increased ground contact. Consciously crafted, this trailblazing silhouette employs Gore-Tex footwear fabric with recycled textile. And if you want a pair of these, check them out. The link's in my description. And on the site, it says best for hiking. So clearly a hiking boot. So now let's start going through the details of this boot and see if it's worth $240 and if they've solved all these problems, starting with the leather first. So what is this leather? How good is it? Well, it's a nubuck leather, similar to the Ultras, where they take a regular slab of leather, that cross section, sand down the grain to give it that more microfiber texture texture. So how much of that grain did they actually sand off? Not nearly as much as the Ultras. There's still a good amount of grain in there. And the actual thickness of the leather is 1.5 millimeters. So a little bit thicker than the Ultras. That's more in the sneaker range. You know, for most boots you see 2 to 2.5 millimeters thick. But I also cut a little slit in it and it's backed by fabric. So ideally for me personally, I'd rather just have a thicker leather. But it's kind of the thing with these foam hiking boots is they're supposed to be lightweight, breathable, really flexible, and they're competing on comfort. We did the puncture test. It took 65 pounds to puncture through, so not great results. And then you also have a lot of different textiles and fabrics all over the place. But one thing I want to mention about this is I really like the pattern of this upper and how the leather has these sawtooth cutouts because they just look cool and they look like they're functional. But when you're actually wearing this, you do feel the difference of not having all that leather bound up on top of your foot. These cutouts do make a difference and they're pretty comfortable. And that's that benefit of using a thinner leather, even though I'd rather have a thicker leather. They also say that this is a Leather Working Group Gold Rated Waterproof Nubuck. We did the waterproof test and it's clearly waterproof. We left it in there for 5 minutes and no water got to the inside. So if we look at the lining and the inside of this boot, you know, it's just a typical lining. You've got the chevron, moisture wicking, a breathable lining that you see in basically every boot in this price range. I don't know why they're claiming waterproof leather because it clearly absorbs water like crazy. Like maybe deep inside it doesn't quite get through as much, but we've seen a lot more waterproof leathers where the water just beads up on top. And then for the insole, just an open cell foam, you know, it feels kind of like an ortholite. So it's not cheap foam, but it's not, you know, it doesn't have any special features to it. It's just a very basic insole. And then to really the most interesting part and potentially the thing that has the most BS, it's the midsole because they say it's a dual density CMEVA midsole with Hubble heel and swallowtail and late stage meta rocker with integrated flex grooves. What does all that mean? Well, the CMEVA is compressed midsole EVA sole. So it's just an EVA midsole, but they put a couple other letters on there. It's just classic branding. So what do they mean by compression molded? Well, there's usually two types of uses of EVA foam. One is you have already made foam sheets and you cut out the specific shape and then glue it into the shoe or the boot. The other is the compression molded where they have metal molds where they pour that liquid hot EVA into it, it aerates, it cures, and then it's molded to these specific shapes where you get all these lines and all these different textures, and it also fuses to the shoe itself. So it's the more common way of doing it, especially in more expensive shoes, but it's really not that different than most EVA shoes and boots as far as I understand anyway. But what about the Hubble heel? Is that more just fancy branding? Well, they say it's effortlessly smooth transitions. Our extended Hubble heel is designed to reduce impact and create smoother heel to toe transitions. So what they mean by Hubble heel is this rounded off booty here, significantly shorter than the previous version we cut in half. And the idea is that as you step, instead of having a hard transition like the ND2s, you've got like a hard heel. Well, when you step on this, you hit that point and it just like pivots and cantilevers over versus the Hubble heel kind of rolls into it. And this is something that actually does work. I felt it in this pair. I felt it while I hiked in these because you can see I've worn these a good amount. I probably hiked them in 50 miles maybe. And you do feel a difference. It is a really nice, like slow rolling transitions. I like that feeling a lot more than the full sole rocker style that we saw in the North Face that I just do not like. And all the negative sides of that where it bottoms out in the top and the bottom, it just ends up being a nightmare for my feet. It seems like the Hubble heel has the same effect, but just better in basically every way. And if you look at the swallowtail thing, what they say is it allows you to distribute your weight across a larger surface area when landing on the ground. As a result, it gives the shoe more stability since you achieve an earlier heel strike. So I'm assuming that they mean swallowtail is like the split, you know, here. I don't really know what it's supposed to do. The explanation didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'm assuming it's split so that if you do kind of step off center, it will flex at a different rate than the rest of it because it has a split in it. To me, it seems like the split in the heel would fix that problem if you kind of stepped a little crooked. So the whole heel wouldn't collapse, it would just be one half, but I don't really know what that does. So you have to let me know what you think. And the last big marketing thing is their late stage meta rocker. They say it's designed for a smooth and efficient transition underfoot. Our curved meta rocker can be dialed up to create faster transition in the forefoot or dialed down to provide more ground contact and stability. So honestly, your guess is as good as mine when it comes to some of these features, but I do think that the Hubble heel does work. But what about the foam? What kind of foam is this? Well, it's a true dual density midsole because this darker foam is a little bit softer at a 25 Shore, and this white foam is a little bit harder to 35 Shore. So similar concept to what we've seen in some other boots and shoes where you have that really soft foam underneath that squishes a lot, and then it's encapsulated by a harder foam, so you get the stability and the anti-rolling of a really soft foam. It clearly works because we did the bar drop test on it. It bounced It's up 7¼ inches, which is in the top 10. And so even though it's really soft foam, it is a responsive foam, and it seems like this encapsulated dual density midsole does actually work. And if you look at the outsole, it still has those same problems we've seen with some of the other hiking boots in this little series, where you've got the rubber, you know, it's a nice Vibram Mega Grip traction lug outsole. It's got these little teeth on it for extra grip, but you also have lots of foam on there. And the problem with this foam is it wears out pretty quick and stuff can get stuck in it. And so for me personally, for a hiking boot, I'd way rather just have a solid layer, but you might lose some of the squish. Obviously, there's some benefits to having that flexibility of not having a solid outsole, but we don't know for sure if it is actually dual density, because sometimes they just do things on the outside and then on the inside it's completely different. We don't know what's on the inside, how the profile is. Is it actually a rocker shape? Because it didn't feel like it underfoot like the Under Armours that just wore my feet out. So let's cut them in half and find out. All right, we got it cut in half, so let's see what's inside. So fortunately, it is a true dual density outsole. You can see this softer gray foam and a little bit harder whitish gray foam. And as for like the profile, it definitely has a little bit of that rocker style, but not nearly as much as the Under Armours. And you do have a little bit of arch support there, especially where this heel is going to compress a little bit. And to me, these were really comfortable when I was hiking around in them, because they balance that squish with the stability, with the comfortable upper. And I still think the Adidas Terrex are a little bit squishier and more comfortable underfoot. I still think the Ultras have a wider toe box, which is more comfortable in certain ways. But this might have been the most well-rounded like foam hiking boot that we cut. But more importantly, did they do a little plastic surgery on the booty and get that thing reduced down a little bit? Now we've got both of these that you can compare and look at them, and clearly they have. And it's improved the boot significantly. This was tough to wear. I didn't love this one. This, on the other hand, it still has an average size heel, but it's that rocker style at the heel only, so you get that smoother transition without the whole thing feeling like a boat and it wearing your feet out. And as for the layers on the inside, they are glued pretty well and cemented to the lasting board underneath, and I think that's because it is that compression molded. You know, I guess, well, I don't know actually. Oh, I'm tearing it apart. It looks like it's glued. Actually, I changed my mind. I think it's glued. I think the midsole itself is compression molded, but I don't think the upper of the boot is part of that molding process. I think it's glued on afterwards. Is it worth 240 bucks? Because these are pricey. You know, they're this new brand. They've got a lot of cool features. It seems to work pretty well. Is it worth 240 bucks? It could be if you're looking for this exact thing. You know, if you're looking for a really soft hiker that has smooth transition. But the problem with 240 bucks for me is this outsole. It's just not going to be very durable, because if we take a little durometer test of the outsole, it is 70 short A's, 65 to 70, so it's still good. It's going to be fairly durable, but you know, it's only a matter of time before you wear through this and that foam's going to wear out. And so for me, up in that $240 price range, it's a little steep. I would have to think about it for sure. But there's plenty of people that like this brand that want to pay for this technology and all this stuff that's rolled into it, because it is a very comfortable hiking boot. So now, how does this rank on the foam-based affordable hiking boot series board? This one's tough. I'm still kind of deciding, honestly. But overall, if you look at all the boots for what they are and all the features involved, whether it's the comfort, the support, the durability, I think this one takes the top spot. I'm going to put it at number one. It's the most expensive, but I think it's the most well-rounded and it worked the best. It's not perfect, but I think it has the most features I'm looking for, and it's the boot that I wore the most because it was more comfortable, and I ended up just going back to it, and honestly, it was the most comfortable initially. It was the most comfortable while side heeling and being really out in the boonies, beating through sagebrush and scrub oak and stuff. The only thing I wish it had is just a little bit wider toe box, because it is pretty narrow. And to have this narrow of a toe box for a more casual style hiking boot, I would have rather had just a little bit wider one. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go watch the Ultra video because we kind of go through the pros and cons of the really wide toe boxes and how comfortable they are, but also how unsupportive they are if you're really out hiking hard. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with it. I think it's the #1 spot. So let me know what you guys think, how you'd rank them, what other boots in this series you want us to cover. I think it's all the ones that we've purchased, but I'd be down to do a couple more. So if there's one you think beats these or has all the combination of the things you're looking for, let me know because we'll add it to the series. So thank you guys, see ya. So let's cut them in half and find out. Let's cut them in half and find out. Let's cut them in half and find out. All right, we got them cut in half, let's find out. All right, we got them cut in half, let's find out.